All right, Max. It was a bittersweet symphony type win for Indiana tonight. A special edition of Earn Your Stripes live edition post game of the Indiana Maryland game that just went final moments ago. Indiana a winner over Maryland 71 to 68, a game they really needed to have. Actually, both teams really needed that game, and Indiana was able to pull it out late. A really big win for them, 5-3 in the conference. Their 12th win overall this season. Max, welcome in. What were your thoughts on the game overall? Obviously, it went right down to the wire.
Yeah, that was a good game. I mean, it was cool to see Assembly Hall like that. I mean, those three fouls that IU had late. That the first one I was saying, oh, that I don't know if that was a foul. That wasn't a very good call. Right back, another call right there, and that last and one in transition. I mean, that Assembly Hall was rocking in frustration off that. And I think IU went on about a 6-0 run right there. That was coming. The refs were just waiting for some makeup calls right after that, and Devontae Green had that fadeaway. Archie's waving him forward, and if you go to the basket, like odds are you're going to get a foul, but unless you fade away. That's what Devontae did. Luckily, Zach McRoberts, who I was tweeting about, big fan, he kind of poked it out of Cowan's hand right to Rob, and I mean that was really a game changer. Rob hit it and one, getting the ball tipped to him, and the next thing you know, IU kind of comes back from being down about 5 or 6 and kind of just not cruises, but just holds on and just pulls it off. So I mean that was a big win. I mean that let's talk about how at the beginning of the year, people are asking me, well, where do you think IU can finish this year? We're all pretty nervous. I mean, they're top 6 right now. They're tied with Nebraska. Nebraska's in a fight right now with Ohio State, so they could easily be 5 by the end of the night. Which I mean, I think Indiana fans will definitely take at this point.
Yeah, especially when you consider what could have been. I mean, nobody really knew the status of Juwan Morgan. We didn't think the ankle was that bad coming out of the Michigan State game, which was a blowout. But if it was bad, or if it keeps him out for any length of time, this is a completely different team, Max. And Indiana not only gets Juwan Morgan tonight, but gets him in his best form, if there is a best form. I mean, he's pretty much done this every game for most of the season. And he put Indiana on his back and refused to let them lose there at the end, very much like he did in that Notre Dame game. I mean, you mentioned the 3 calls in a row that go against Indiana. None of them really seem like fouls. It seems like maybe the game will slip away from Indiana at the end. And then Morgan, you mentioned McRoberts and Johnson, but Morgan made play after play after play leading up to the final one where Josh Newkirk misses 2 free throws. Indiana's only up by 1, and Morgan tips it in. So 25 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists on a bad ankle, played 36 minutes, and it looked fairly easy for him for most of the night. I mean, just backing in bigger guys, pump faking, getting them in the air, fouls, creative finishes around the rim, and he's really grown into a Big Ten star. He's a legitimate star at this point.
No kidding. I think he's definitely coming into a role similar that Keita Bates-Diop is playing for Ohio State, and they're having their success here now come conference. I mean, they're similar players in a way. Keita Bates is more of a 3-point shooter, but they're long. They can finish around the basket. They can do some things athletically and block some shots. Juwan now forced to play a 5-man, so he's doing some different things than he was at the beginning. But I mean, very, very impressed with Juwan because he does these things like, for instance, that rebound he had on the free throw. I mean, that was a huge rebound. I mean, you're kind of like, you see it, and it's, oh, Josh misses 2. Juwan gets it, puts it in. Great. No, like, let's talk. Josh missed 2 free throws that were huge there and just puts the team on his back and puts it in for a layup. I mean, that was easily a turning point. Could have lost that game. I think if there's two things that you couldn't even have taken one out and the game would have been over. If McRoberts doesn't get his hand on those balls that he did, and Juwan doesn't do the Juwan things he's doing and get those rebounds and finish late and, dipsy-do kind of around the rim, lowering that shoulder, kind of finishing around their bigs. I mean, there's no chance Indiana wins that game, but I was interested. I mean, Juwan, he can be a 5-man in the Big Ten. He was out-muscling the Maryland bigs.
He is. I mean, he's been forced to be a 5-man, but he doesn't look out of position playing there.
Oh, not at all. I mean, and Maryland bigs aren't a joke. They are no joke whatsoever. And Juwan was out-muscling him. Tchaikovsky, he had that flop late because I mean that was really all he could do. Juwan was just killing him, so he's like, all right, I'm gonna pretend. I mean that was easily not a foul. Juwan just, I was like, man, if I was Juwan, I'd take that ball and punt it about 80 rows up in the stand, see how far I could get it. But no, Juwan did a great job of staying composed and doing what he needed to do late. 25 points, and that's huge. I mean, the only thing I can critique on him is the 3-point shooting, and you wonder how much of that is attributed to his ankle because, I was saying this to OG last year when he sprained his ankle. I go, hey man, like, one thing that I noticed when I sprain my ankle is, that 3-point shot doesn't quite fall as easy because, when you're shooting from deep, you really need to have good balance. And when you're jumping off one foot more than the other, it throws off your shot a little bit. And OG's like, oh, like I've been working on it. I'll be okay. He comes to me at the end of the year and is like, dude, you weren't kidding. Shot was so off after that. I mean, you were 100% right. You called it. And, so Juwan was 0 for 2 from 3 today. He's had a lot more success lately. But, I mean, that was the one critique. He had a heck of a game, though.
Yeah, and you mentioned the balance and the footwork. I mean, his footwork around the rim has always been excellent, but it continued to be today. And you mentioned the guys he's going against Maryland. It's not like he ever panics when he gets the ball one-on-one, whether it's on the block or in the short corner, and he's going against Tchaikovsky. I can't say his name right.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, I got it right.
Or Fernando. I mean, he's very patient, and his footwork is phenomenal. And you look at the numbers he had against those guys, both of them much bigger than him. Fernando and Tchaikovsky combined for 6 points. 6 points compared to 25 from one guy and Morgan. 3 for 7 from the field. They combined for 7 rebounds. I mean, those guys were virtual non-factors. The only guys that really hurt Indiana, other than Nickens there more toward the end, were Callan and Herter. And, those guys are going to hurt you because those guys have been forced to carry that team in the absence of Justin Jackson. So I thought a great game from Indiana. You look at Callan, he had 18, but he was 6 for 18 from the field, so they really made him work. He had 6 turnovers, really frustrating game for him. Herter did a very good job of making tough shots, especially early. McRoberts was mainly guarding him, and they run him off a variety of screens to try and get him open in space. And he made the majority of his shots, 6 for 9, 16 points and 11 rebounds. But for the most part, they did a good job on him too. And Indiana shoots 50% from the field. So a lot of things that you have to like coming out of this game, other than Morgan and McRoberts, like you mentioned. I think it's just the small things here and there that you didn't see early in the year, the diving on the loose ball, the adjustment, the rotation defensively that this team has really grown into that makes a difference in games like this.
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, I think Josh also did a great job on Colin Newkirk. He was – I'm sorry, I'm on a first-name basis with everybody. I probably should call them by their last names for media purposes. But, no, I mean, Josh is quick, and I think he did a really good job of keeping up with Colin. Colin's so fast, but Josh did a very good job of making a lot of his shots tough, getting a hand on a couple balls when he's trying to hit these layups. I'm using his speed. But, I mean, yeah, Herter was keeping him in there for a while with some really tough shots. I mean, he had 16 points on only 9 shots. Like, that's impressive. Herter was no joke. He was definitely their tank today. But, I mean, overall, I think this is a really well-coached game by Archie, too. I mean, Archie did a great job of getting guys off cuts. You saw Justin Smith. He finished with 12, but a lot of those were just coming off cuts and finishing quick around the rim. Maryland was having a lot of difficulty guarding the off-the-ball action. So I think Archie did a great job getting his guys ready for this one. And I mean, Indiana going to Illinois. I'll be there on Wednesday, the Illinois Indiana game. But I mean, Indiana, man, they're who knows, they could pull the Wisconsin thing, start going for a streak of finishing top 4.
Yeah, and they're really playing hot. And to your point about Archie, I think the adjustments are the big thing you notice about him. I mean, Maryland comes out in the first half, and there's a lot of different times when this game could have swung one way or the other. Right near the half there, when Devontae Green hits the 3 was a big one because Indiana had been trailing, and then they are able to take the lead into the break. And then you look at the numbers for Maryland in the second half: 9 for 29. They were 4 for 13 from 3 after making 5 for 10 threes in the first half. Got to the line 9 times as opposed to 17 or I guess 8 in the first half, but only 9 foul attempts. And Indiana turns it over only 12 times for the game. They did have 9 in the second half, so that's not great. But the halftime adjustments, I thought, especially in this game, were critical because you had to get Herter out of his rotation, and he really felt comfortable in that first half. He played 39 minutes, but they were able to get him uncomfortable and make his shots, one, more difficult to get, and two, more difficult to make in the second half. And I think that really speaks to the coaching of Archie Miller and his ability to go in that locker room at halftime and make the adjustments necessary to pull off a win like this.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing you got to note is defensively. Archie obviously is everyone calls him the defensive coach, but with Herter had 5 turnovers and Cowan had 6. Like that's a lot of turnovers. I mean, that's Indiana-esque of last year. That's a lot of turnovers. So, I mean, I just can't harp on enough how well Zach McRoberts did, Josh Newkirk, and even Rob. We haven't even talked about him. He just had a quiet 12 and 8. 5 for 12 shooting. That's solid. But I mean, everyone had their hands in there. McRoberts with 3 steals, Jawan had 2, and Rob had 2. Al Durham with 2 as well. But overall, very impressed with the coaching job. I think Archie had his guys prepared. And yeah, I mean, that was pretty much it. I mean, they lost the rebounding game pretty bad, 41-31, and got offensive rebound at 13-17. But I mean, they found a way to win. I mean, I think, at the beginning of the year, this team was young under a new coach, similar to what Ohio State was. I'm using that parallel again, but they're starting to find themselves. It's tough when you lose guys and you have to kind of redefine how you're going to play and who you are. But Indiana, I think you got to just completely erase the Michigan State game from the memory, because you got a team that should be number 1 in the entire nation, but they had some toughness lapses, weeks, and they really took it out on an Indiana team that was shorthanded after losing Juwan Morgan. So, from your memory, if you're an Indiana fan, I mean, they are sitting on the top half of the conference, going to a winless Illinois team. They got to make sure, Illinois is they're gonna give them everything they have again, because there's teams want those first wins. Final Four with Michigan, we went to Penn State, who was sitting at 0-15 in conference, and we're like, we're the number 1 team in the nation. We're feeling great. We got future Naismith Player of the Year and Trey Burke. We got Tim Hardaway. We were great. And lost to a Penn State team that was just, Penn State's always tough. They had Tim Frazier at the time and DJ Newbill, and they gave us fits in that ball screen. But overall, I mean, you got to really make sure that you take care of this Illinois team, try to take their heart away early, undo his thing, and you got Purdue coming in this weekend. So I mean, it's time if Indiana wants to kind of make their last run to potentially make the NCAA tournament. They're not out of it yet. I mean, if they finish top the Big Ten, it's hard to say they can't. But yeah, I mean, it's easily done. They just got to put this run together and keep doing what they're doing and win these tough games.
Yeah, the way they won this one, they've turned it over 6 fewer times, 5 more blocks, 8-3, 10-5 in the steals. And these are areas where Indiana in the past had not won games. I mean, those are the areas, the margins they had to win to beat Maryland, because Maryland's going to make more 3-pointers than you. The free throw game is always kind of up in the air on any given night. And so that's where Indiana was really able to make up the difference. And you asked me that last year, Indiana's going to win the game based on turning it over fewer times and getting more block shots, and you probably scratch your head and laugh, because that's not what happened last year. But this team's different. And to your point about Zach McRoberts, I mean, the guy plays 31 minutes. Actually, some of his numbers show up on the stat sheet tonight: 7 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 steals, but they still don't go into how valuable he was. I mean, he just made plays at every juncture in the game, and I think a lot of guys did that. I think a guy we haven't mentioned, Justin Smith, a lot of his early contributions, Indiana doesn't win this game without his 12 points, and most of those coming in the first half. Everybody has to contribute to win these Big Ten games, because so many teams are jumbled up there towards the middle that any 1 or 2 guys or any 1 or 2 plays can swing the game. And so I think that's what we saw. But big-time win for Indiana. Thank you for joining us and checking out this live broadcast. It's something that we'll play around with and see if it works, but mostly stick to the podcast. Hopefully you're listening to that, Earn Your Stripes, 2 times a week, and we'll be back with another show on Thursday.